At my age, I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. But that morning, while the sun was just peeking through the kitchen window, my life took a turn so unexpected that even today, when I remember it, I feel a shiver in my chest. For almost 20 years, my wife Linda served my breakfast exclusively in the same white cup, a simple cup, no designs, no cracks, nothing that called attention to itself. She always said the same thing. It is better this way, Michael. This cup holds the heat better. I never argued. I never suspected. Until that morning when I decided to switch cups without her noticing. It was not out of mistrust. It was out of curiosity, out of fatigue, out of a sensation that had been growing inside me for weeks, like a silent alarm that only older men, after a lifetime of observing gestures, are capable of perceiving. When she went out to the garden to cut herbs for tea, I took the opportunity and put my breakfast in another identical cup, one that we had not used for years. When I finished breakfast and lifted the cup to take it to the sink, I saw something at the bottom, something that froze me, a dark, thick residue stuck to the center like a deliberate mark. My heart stopped for a second. I'd never seen anything like that. Never. My breathing became heavy and irregular, and the worst part was I had no idea what that finding meant, but I knew it was not an accident. But before I continue, I would like to know if you subscribe to the channel, William's Revenge Stories, and if you liked the video. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. Now let us continue. I stood there looking at that substance at the bottom of the cup. It was not coffee. It was not tea. It was not chocolate. It was something different, something that seemed almost chemical. A strange smell, a slight itch in the nose. And then I remembered that never in all those years had I washed my own cup. Linda always washed it herself. She never let me put it in the dishwasher. Sometimes she even put it away before I finished clearing the table. I swallowed hard. The house was silent. The sound of scissors cutting herbs still came from the garden. I felt an impulse to leave everything as it was, to pretend I had not seen anything. But at my 68 years, after burying my parents, 2 brothers and several friends, I no longer believe in coincidences. And that stain was not a coincidence. I decided to check the original cup, the one Linda had used for me every day. I took it out of the high cabinet where I had placed it without thinking. I held it up to the light, and then my hands started to tremble. At the bottom it had a worn circular mark, as if something had been accumulating or melting over time, as if every morning I had consumed something without knowing it. I did not know if I was exaggerating. I did not know if my imagination was playing a trick on me, but something inside told me I should not ignore it. Something instinctive, something visceral, something that had slept for years. Linda entered the kitchen just at that moment. I was still holding the cup. She stopped when she saw me, and a shadow barely perceptible crossed her face. I have seen her smile in many ways throughout our life, but that expression I did not know. "What are you doing with that cup, Michael?" she asked with a voice that was too soft. "Just," I stammered, "I was switching them. I thought it would be nice to use another one." Linda frowned slightly. "I told you that one is better," she repeated, coming closer. "Give it back to me, please." There was something in her tone that I had never heard. It was not anger. It was not worry. It was urgency and fear. Yes, fear. My heart raced, so I responded calmly, feigning innocence. "Linda, I just want to know why this cup is so special." She reached out her hand to take it, but I did not give it to her. "Michael," she said more seriously, "give me the cup." I saw a glint in her eyes, not of affection, not of habit, but a quick reflex, almost imperceptible, that told me this conversation should never have happened. "Linda," I said slowly, "what is it that always remains at the bottom?" She blinked, once, twice, as if her brain were looking for a credible lie. "Nothing, just remains of breakfast." "It does not smell like coffee or tea," I replied without raising my voice. She tensed up. Her breathing changed. For a second I thought I saw her tremble. Then she took a step back. "Michael, you are being ridiculous," she said. Give me the cup and let us clean it. That is it. But I did not move. Something inside me had just fully awakened. Something that had slept during many years of a quiet, silent, routine marriage. Sometimes love turns into habit and habit into blindness. Why can I not use another cup? I insisted. She pressed her lips together, and then she said it. Because that is the one you must use. My heart stopped, just like that. The one I must use. Not the one I prefer, not the one that keeps the heat, not the one I like best, the one I must. That nuance changed everything. Linda, I murmured, what have you been putting in my breakfast? She opened her eyes wide. She took another step back. Michael, please do not ruin this. This? What was this? Our marriage? Or something else? I took a step closer, not to intimidate her, but to see her better, to see if there was anything left of the woman I married 4 decades ago. Linda, tell me the truth, I whispered. She began to breathe irregularly. She brought a hand to her chest. You would not understand, she said. I did it for us. And then I understood. Whatever it was not an accident. It was not a common stain. It was something she had put there, with intention, with purpose. Something I was consuming every morning. Something that had been carefully hidden under the pretext of a loving routine. My voice broke when I said, Linda, what were you doing to me? She closed her eyes, and she answered something that still makes me shudder today. Protecting you, Michael. Protecting us both. But her definition of protection, I would soon discover, resembled nothing of mine. Linda did not speak again after saying that phrase. She stood still with her hands trembling slightly, as if she had revealed more than she intended. I watched her in silence, trying to recognize her. That woman in front of me was the same one with whom I shared dinners, trips, losses, laughs, sleepless nights, and days of struggle. But something in her gaze, something, had changed. Or perhaps it was always there, hidden behind a routine so meticulous that I never took the time to look beyond it. I walked slowly to the table and placed the cup in front of us. The light coming through the window illuminated the bottom and highlighted even more the dark substance stuck there. I felt a tingling run down my arms. Linda looked down, avoiding eye contact with me. A part of me wanted to hug her to demand she tell me the truth, without beating around the bush to go back to being that man who trusted her blindly. But another part, an older, wiser, more tired part, knew that the time had come to face whatever was happening in our house. Linda, I said with a firm voice, why do you say you were protecting me? She swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with a sadness that almost melted me, but not quite. I could no longer let my emotions govern my decisions, not after seeing what I had seen. It is complicated, she whispered. You are not going to understand if I tell you like this all at once. Then tell me slowly, I replied, from the beginning. Linda backed up to the counter and leaned against it. She took a deep breath, but her voice came out broken. I was afraid of losing you. Losing me? I repeated, confused. Linda, I was not going anywhere. She let out a nervous laugh, almost choked. Oh, Michael, you do not know what happens when you do not look. You do not know what your medical records hide the ones you never want to check. You do not know anything about what I have had to prevent. My hands froze. My medical records? Linda, what did you do? She shook her head several times with quick movements, as if she wanted to shake off an unpleasant idea. You would not understand. I only wanted to take care of you, keep you well, keep you here. Those words stuck in my chest like a thorn. Keep me here? What do you mean by here, Linda? She did not answer. That silence was worse than any confession. I went to the cupboard where we kept the cups. They were all aligned shiny like new, all except mine, the one she insisted on using. I took it in my hands and examined it in detail. It was identical to the others, but lighter, more worn, more manipulated. Michael, please, said Linda, approaching, do not make this harder. Hard is what it will be for you if you do not tell me the truth. She stopped. For the first time in many years, I saw her with fear. Not the fear one feels before an accident, a strange noise, or a stormy night. It was the fear of someone who has built a lie so big they no longer know how to sustain it. "Linda," I repeated softly, "tell me what was in that cup." Her lips moved, but no sound came out. And then before I could insist, the landline phone rang in the living room. That old, almost forgotten sound echoed in the house as if it were an alarm. Linda jumped. I stared at her. "Do not answer," I told her. But she ran to the living room before I could stop her. I followed her, immediately walking as fast as my 68-year-old knees allowed. When I arrived, she already had the phone in her hand. "Yes," she said with a trembling voice. She paused. Her face went pale. "I told you not to call me at this time," she whispered almost inaudibly. My heart stopped again for an instant. "Linda," I said from the doorframe, "who is it?" She looked at me, not with surprise, not with guilt, but with desperation. It's desperation that confirmed something devastating to me. Whoever was on the other side of the phone was not a stranger. It was someone important. "Hang up, Linda," I ordered, taking a step forward. She shook her head. "I cannot." And before I could react, she turned toward the wall, as if she wanted to hide the conversation. "I cannot talk now," she whispered. "Yes." He already started to suspect. "Yes, I know. But it is not that easy. No, I cannot do it today. I told you I need time." Those words hit me like a hammer to the chest. "Linda!" I shouted, snatching the phone from her. "Who are you talking to?" But the line was already dead. Linda covered her face with her hands. Her body was trembling. "Michael, please do not jump to conclusions." "Conclusions?" I replied, feeling rage mixed with fear. "They draw themselves when one's wife receives secret calls saying she cannot do it today." She started to cry. Not soft tears, not guilty tears. Deep, silent tears of someone who knows she has finally been discovered. "Linda," I said more slowly, "what is it that you cannot do?" She looked up, and finally between sobs she said, "I cannot let you go from my life." But that was not the whole truth. I knew it. She knew it. And even if she did not admit it yet, there was someone else involved, someone who should not be in our story, and who nevertheless was more present than I imagined. Linda kept crying in front of me with trembling hands, covering her face, as if she wanted to hide from the world and from herself. I watched her without moving, paralyzed, trying to put together pieces that did not quite fit. For 40 years, this woman had been my partner, my support in difficult times, my refuge when life became heavy. How was it possible that now I was looking at her like a stranger? "Linda," I said in a low voice, almost whispering, "tell me who is on the phone." She shook her head over and over, like a child asked for a truth she fears telling. "I cannot, Michael," she sobbed. "I cannot." "Why?" I asked. "What is it that binds you in this way?" She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, but her chest rose and fell irregularly. She walked to the window and looked out as if she expected to see someone watching from the street. That gesture made my skin crawl. "You are not understanding," she said without turning to me. "This is not that simple. I am protecting you. I am protecting us." "From whom?" I insisted. "From what?" Linda pressed her hands against the glass. "From a truth you are not ready to know." My heart raced. Sometimes the body understands before the mind, and mine knew that what I was about to hear could change my life forever. "Then tell me," I said firmly. "Make me understand." She'd finally turned to me. Her eyes were swollen, but there was a determination in them I had not seen before, as if the moment she had been trying to avoid for years had arrived. "Michael," she began, "do you remember that doctor you went to 2 years ago, the one who ran tests because you were very tired?" I nodded slowly. "Of course I remember." "Do you remember that you never wanted to go back to see the results?" My brow furrowed instinctively. "Linda, I did not go back because you told me it was not necessary. You said everything was fine, that it had only been stress." She closed her eyes in pain. I did not tell you the whole truth. I felt a lash in my chest. Linda, do not play with me. What did they find in those tests? She took a breath. She opened her mouth, but managed to pronounce nothing. It was I who dealt the next blow unintentionally, because I remembered something. Linda, I said with a thread of a voice, does this have to do with what was in the cup? She pressed her lips together. Her silence was a clear answer. Linda, what have you been giving me? I asked, feeling a cold sweat run down my back. What was in my breakfast? She finally spoke, but not looking me in the eyes. It was something to help you, to keep you stable. Stable? My voice broke. Stable from what? Linda took a step back. Michael, you had a serious heart problem. Very serious. And if I told you, you refused to treat yourself. I know you. You are stubborn. You never go to the doctor. You do not trust medications. So, yes, I added something to your breakfast, something that kept you well. That explanation sounded too convenient, too soft, too perfect to be true. I listened to her, but my instincts shouted something different. She is not saying everything. Why did you never tell me? I asked. She wiped her tears with anger. Because if I told you that you were sick, you would sink, and I could not allow that. I took a deep breath, trying to order my thoughts. Linda, what medication was it? She remained silent. Not answering was the most devastating confirmation. Linda, what was it? I repeated firmly. She clenched her fists. A regulator, she whispered. Nothing more. What is it called? I asked. She opened her mouth. And just at that moment the floor creaked behind us. We both turned. It was my son. I had not heard him arrive. What medication was it, Mom? He asked with a mixture of rage and fear in his voice. Because I saw the bottom of that cup, and that was not a regulator. Linda went pale. Literally. Her face lost color in seconds. You do not understand, she said. Then make us understand, replied my son, because what I saw there looked like something else. I swallowed hard. What do you think it was, son? He looked at me, took a deep breath, and said, something you did not want Dad to discover. Something that was not on any prescription. Something she did not obtain legally. Linda shook her head several times, trembling. It is not what you think. My son took a step forward. Oh, no. Then tell me, why did you receive a call just when Dad discovered the cup? Why did you tell someone you could not do it today? What is it that you could not do? The silence that fell was so heavy it seemed to fill the whole house. Linda opened her mouth, but this time she did not manage to answer, because suddenly we heard a dry thud outside, as if someone had closed a door violently. My son ran to the window. He looked toward the car parked across the street. Dad, he said with a grave voice, there is someone there. I approached as best I could. Through the reflections of the glass, I distinguished a figure inside the car. I could not see his face, but the silhouette was unmistakable. A man staring at us. And Linda, upon seeing him, dropped a cup she had picked up, without realizing it. It broke into pieces on the floor. She murmured, No, he was not supposed to come. Not yet. My son looked at her horrified. Who is that man, Mom? Linda began to cry again, but this time it was not fear. It was panic. Linda, I said, feeling like I was running out of air. Who is it? She looked up defeated and murmured, It is the person who wants you far from my life. I felt as if the floor sank beneath my feet. My son and I looked at each other incredulous. Far? I repeated. What are you saying, Linda? She closed her eyes. That man is who I called. He knows about your heart. He knows what was in the cup. My son took a step back. And who is he? He shouted. Linda opened her eyes, red from crying, and said the name I never imagined hearing. It is your brother Michael. It is Robert. I felt the world turn off for an instant. My brother? My own brother? Robert. That name fell in the room like a sharp knife that not only cut the air but also something inside me. I do not know how much time I spent without moving, without breathing, without comprehending. Linda's words still floated suspended, as if they wanted to return to her mouth, as if they wished they had not been spoken. My son was the first to react. "Robert!" he repeated, incredulous. "Dad's brother, the one who left years ago?" Linda nodded without looking up. I felt a tremor in my hands. It was not from age. It was from betrayal, from disbelief, from a pain so old I thought it would never bleed again. "Linda," I murmured, "what does Robert have to do with our life?" She took a deep breath, wiping her soaked face, but her voice broke again. "You did not want to know, Michael. You always closed that door. You always denied that your brother could hurt you. You always said he was not capable of something like that." My son looked at me, confused. "What happened between you two, Dad?" I sighed a sigh, loaded with years, with difficult memories, with wounds poorly closed. "Robert and I began feeling a knot in my throat. We were not always distant. As children, we were inseparable. But when we grew up, he took dark paths. Problems with money, dangerous friendships, gambling things I did not finish understanding until it was too late." Linda clenched her fists. "Robert never got over that you got ahead," she intervened. "He always envied you everything. Your job, your marriage, your stability. He never forgave you for being the good one of the family." My son frowned. "And what does that have to do with what you were doing?" he asked. "What does it have to do with the cup?" Linda swallowed hard. "It has everything to do with it." The room filled with an unbearable silence. "Linda," I insisted with a grave voice, "I want the truth. Half of nothing serves me anymore. I want to know what Robert has to do with this, with you, with me." She finally forced herself to speak. "When you were sick 2 years ago," she said slowly, "Robert found out." "How?" I asked. "I do not know. Maybe an acquaintance at the hospital. Maybe he looked for your data." "Robert always finds what he wants," she responded with bitterness. "The truth is that one day he appeared at my door when you were asleep. He said he knew you were weak and that you needed help." My son clenched his teeth. "Help? What kind of help?" Linda looked down. "He said he had a solution so Michael would not deteriorate more, but that it was necessary to keep him stable. He told me about a supplement that would prevent you from having a serious episode. Something natural, according to him. Something I had to dissolve in your drink every morning." I felt a dagger in my chest. "Linda, for God's sake, you trusted Robert for something like that?" "In him?" She began to cry again. "I was desperate, Michael. I saw you tired, without strength, pale. You refused to go back to the doctor." Robert spoke with assurance. "He said you would never accept treatment, that it was the only way to help you. I believed him. I clung to his word. I clung to the hope of not losing you." My son shook his head. "Mom, what were you thinking?" She looked at him with swollen eyes. "In you? In your father? In our life? I did not think it could be something bad. I did not think Robert had a hidden motive. But I knew it instantly. Robert never does anything for free." Linda felt defeated. "I discovered it late, Michael, very late. After months he started calling me. He started controlling the dosage. He started telling me that you could not recover too fast, that if I stopped using it, suddenly it could be dangerous, and that we had to continue for your well-being." My son opened his eyes, horrified. "For whose well-being, really?" he spat with rage. Linda squeezed her eyes shut, crying in silence. "Robert threatened me," she said finally. "He told me that if I stopped using it, he would tell things that would destroy the family. I do not know where he got so much information, but he knew things about you, about your work, even about me." And I felt my throat burning. "Linda, were you afraid?" She nodded slowly. "Afraid of him, but also—" She fell silent for a few seconds. "I was also afraid of losing you, even if it sounds absurd now." My son took a step toward her, but no longer with rage, but with bewilderment. "Mom, was Dad being poisoned?" The word fell heavy. Linda covered her mouth with both hands. "No, it was not poison," she said with a broken voice. "Not at first. It was something to make him dependent, so he would need the cup, so so that Robert could manage the situation. I closed my eyes. Everything fit. The lack of energy, the intermittent dizziness, the dependence on breakfast, my strange apathy on certain days. Dependent on what, Linda? I asked. What were you giving me? She finally confessed. A compound that regulates mood and pressure but creates a habit. If you stop it suddenly, you can destabilize. Robert said it was safe, but later he started asking me for money, to blackmail me, to say that if I did not obey, he would tell you. My son took a deep breath. Then what we found in the cup was remains of the compound, she admitted, defeated. I did not manage to dissolve it well this time, and you discovered it. I let myself fall onto the armchair. My legs stopped supporting me. Everything I believed secure became a mirage. Linda, I said, almost without a voice. For how long? She collapsed on the floor. 1.5 years, she whispered. My son covered his face with his hands. I felt my heart skip a beat. Ah, and Robert knows I discovered it? I asked. Linda nodded. Yes, and if he is out there, she pointed to the window, it means he is not coming to talk. My son took a step toward the door, but I stopped him. No, son, I said. This time I face him. Robert remained inside the car, motionless, looking toward our house, as if expecting a signal. He did not get out. He did not honk the horn. He did not make a single gesture. He was just there, watching us like a patient predator who knows the movements of his prey before it even knows it is in danger. I stood still, looking out the window, trying to order the thoughts that battered my mind like a gale. Linda's betrayal, Robert's presence, the substance in the cup. The medical records, I never saw everything mixed with the bitter sensation of having been manipulated for more than 1 year. And yet what hurt me most was not the deception itself, but the motive behind it. Linda claimed to have done it for love, but that love had been twisted, contaminated, dominated by fear and by the threats of my own brother. My son broke the silence. Dad, we have to call the police. No, I replied without looking at him. What do you mean, no? He insisted. Robert is dangerous, Mom said it. You know it. I took a deep breath. I knew Robert better than anyone. The police would not scare him. He had contacts, people who owed him favors, people who preferred to look the other way. If we report him now, I said, we will only alert him, and a cornered man acts without thinking. We cannot risk it. My son clenched his fists. Then what do we do? I kept looking at the car. First, we need proof. Everything Linda said has to be somewhere. Records, messages, something that proves Robert was manipulating her. Linda, who was still on the floor, lifted her head slowly. There is something, she whispered. Something I kept just in case, but never wanted to use. I turned to her. What thing? A notebook, she replied. Robert kept notes, dates, instructions. He left it here when he came, and one time he forgot it. I kept it without him noticing. But it is hidden. My son leaned toward her. Where, Mom? She hesitated a few seconds. In your room, Michael, in the top closet, inside a toolbox you never use. I stared at her. Linda did not seem to be lying. Her voice was so weak and defeated that for the first time in hours I had the impression she was telling the whole truth. I'm going for it, I said. While I climbed the stairs, my legs trembled a little, not from age, but from the weight of what I was about to find. I opened my closet, moved old shoeboxes, photos, clothes I had not used for years, and finally reached the toolbox. It was heavy, rusty on the outside, but upon opening it, I saw it. A black notebook. No labels, no marks, cold to the touch. I took it carefully as if it were a dangerous object, and upon opening it, I knew my life would never be the same. On the first page was a list of dates. Dates that coincided with days when Linda had told me I looked pale, tired, strange. Next to each date, a word, dosage, other instructions, control, adjust. My breathing accelerated. I turned the pages. There were notes about my health, comments about my behavior, even a section where Robert described my character as controllable if the rhythm is maintained. Controllable. That word burned me inside, and then on a folded page I found something even worse. A list of amounts of money, enormous amounts, with Linda's name written next to them on several occasions. It was blackmail, extortion, manipulation, but there was a last page one that made me go cold. If Michael discovers anything, proceed with Plan C. And underneath, Linda knows what to do. I felt a stab in my chest. I leaned against the wall, breathing with difficulty. Linda had reached the point of fearing Robert so much that... how far would she have been willing to go? What the hell did Plan C mean? I closed the notebook and returned to the living room. My son was standing. Linda was still on the floor. Both looked at me. "Did you find it?" asked my son. I nodded, leaving the notebook on the table. Linda looked away ashamed. "That notebook," she whispered. "I found it by accident. I hid it because I was afraid. Afraid of Robert. Afraid of what you would think of me. Afraid of what could happen if I refused." My son opened the first page. "My God!" he exclaimed. "This is enough to put him in jail." "Yes," I said, "but not now. We still need to know what Plan C means." Linda brought her hands to her face. "Michael, please do not read that." "I read it," I replied with cold calm, "and now I need you to explain it to me." She took several seconds to be able to speak. "Robert said that if you found out, I should convince you that you were sick, very sick, so that you would not trust your own memories, that you would feel dependent, vulnerable, manipulatable." My son frowned. "What? That is... It is monstrous," Linda cried. "I did not want to do it, Michael, I swear to you. But he threatened me. He told me if I did not follow his instructions, he would destroy our family, that he would leave you with nothing. And I took a deep breath, trying to process. It was too much for a single heart, too much for a single morning. And then just when I was going to answer, I remembered that I had to fulfill something important for my listeners, now that the story was approaching a critical point. Before continuing, tell me here in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in my place. Do not leave the video, because what comes next will give you goosebumps. My son closed the notebook with force. "Dad, what are we going to do?" I looked at the window. Robert was still there, waiting as if he knew we had already discovered everything. "We're going to put an end to it," I said. "Today." My son swallowed hard. "How?" I took the notebook with a firm hand, starting by showing him that we are no longer afraid of him. And upon saying that, we heard the front door begin to shake. Someone was trying to enter. Robert. The first blow against the door was not strong, but it was firm. A blow that did not seek to knock it down, but to warn that whoever was outside did not need to do so, that he had time, that he had power, that he had control. I felt how my son tensed beside me as if his body prepared instinctively to protect something or someone. Linda, on the other hand, retreated several steps and leaned against the wall, breathing as if she lacked air. The second blow arrived with more force. My son looked at me. "Dad, are you sure we do not call the police?" I shook my head slowly. "If the police enter now, Robert is going to use it against us. He has contacts. He will make it seem that we are the unstable ones, or worse," Linda sobbed. "Robert is not here to talk. He does not do that when he feels someone defies him." I looked at her. "Then it will be better that he does not sense fear in us." The third blow was not against the door, but against the window. A soft, deliberate tap, as if he wanted us to know exactly where he was. My son approached the curtain, opened it barely an inch, and froze. "Dad," he whispered. "He is smiling." My stomach contracted. I knew that smile. It was the same one I had seen when we were children, and he wanted to scare me. The same one he showed when he ruined one of his supposed friends. The same one he wore when at our father's funeral he told me, "In the end, we always win the ones willing to dirty our hands." The sound of the doorknob began to move. Linda let out a stifled scream. I took a deep breath and took a step forward. "I'm going to talk to him." "What?" exclaimed my son. "Dad, it is dangerous." "Son," I said firmly, Robert does not want to kill me. Not yet. He wants control. He wants power. He wants to see if I am still his younger brother, whom he can handle. And today I am going to show him that I am not. My son clenched his fist. I'm going with you. Linda straightened up, crying, Do not go out. Please do not give him what he wants. But I had already decided. Sometimes the only way to defeat a fear is to open the door to it. When I turned the doorknob, my heart beat with a mixture of fury and lucidity that I had not felt in years. I opened the door slowly, and there he was. Robert, older, thinner, but with the same predatory gaze as always. His eyes scanned my face as if reading an old book. Then he looked over my shoulder and smiled. That twisted smile I had always hated. Brother, he said, extending his arms as if coming to hug me. How long has it been? I did not respond to the gesture. His hug was not a hug. It was a noose. You came too far, Robert, I said with a hard voice. He tilted his head, feigning offense. Too far? I came to see you. I came because Linda called me worried. She said you were upset. Just what I had imagined he would use. My son took a step forward. Do not act, Robert. We know what you did. Robert looked at him with a mixture of contempt and pity. Ah, Michael's brilliant little son, always so correct, so moral, so naive. I clenched my fist. I know about the notebook, Robert. His smile went out instantly. That detail took him by surprise. A nervous twitch ruffled his hair involuntarily as he brought his hand to it. What notebook? The one you forgot here, I replied. The one Linda kept. The one that has every blackmail, every dosage, every threat noted. Robert's face hardened. She had no right. You had no right, I interrupted. You got into my house, into my health, into my marriage. You manipulated Linda. You used my illness to gain power over us. Robert clicked his tongue. Oh, Michael, always so dramatic. I offered you help. If Linda misinterpreted the instructions... They were not instructions, I snapped. It was control. It was abuse. And you know it. The atmosphere tensed so much, it seemed the air had become thick. Then Robert took a step closer. Michael, he said in a low voice, you do not understand who you are playing with. I am not the enemy. I am the only person who can keep you alive. My son moved to interpose himself between us. He does not need anything from you. Robert looked at him with a coldness that froze my blood. Your father does not understand how delicate he is. But you could be smart. You could help me make him cooperate. My son laughed, incredulous. Help you? After everything you did? Robert kept talking, ignoring his mockery. Michael, think about it. I can give you stability. I can prevent you from having those cardiac episodes. That fatigue that worries you so much. All thanks to what Linda followed to the letter. Linda let out a sob behind me. Robert continued, But if you stop taking what you need... He made a theatrical pause. It can be dangerous. Very dangerous. My son exploded. You drugged him, you bastard. Robert raised his hands. Strong words. I did not like the connotation. I felt something burning inside me. Something I had kept stored for decades. A mixture of courage, of sadness, of self-respect. And then I took a step toward him. Robert, I said with deadly calm, I do not need anything that comes from you, and I am not going to continue being your experiment. He arched an eyebrow. And what are you going to do? Hit me. Call the police? Convince someone that your own brother drugged you for over a year? Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds? My son held my arm. Dad, do not give him what he wants. Robert smiled again. Exactly, Michael. It does not suit you to turn against me. But it was already too late, because while he spoke, I noticed something behind him. A car. A car that stopped right behind his. And from it, 2 people got out, with uniforms, with weapons, with badges on their chests. My son opened his eyes, surprised. Robert turned slowly. The officers approached with firm steps. Robert Castillo? Said one of them. Robert swallowed hard. What? What is happening? You are under investigation, replied the officer. We have a warrant to bring you in for questioning. Robert looked at me with hatred, with rage, and with the certainty that he no longer had control. I only responded. It was not me. And then the other officer spoke. It was an anonymous complaint with overwhelming evidence. My son leaned close to my ear. Dad, was it you? I shook my head. No, but I know who it was. Robert screamed. The officers handcuffed him. Linda from the door covered her mouth, trembling. My son stood paralyzed, and I smiled for the first time in days, because I knew exactly who had made the report. Someone who had seen everything from the inside. Someone who knew Robert better than us. Someone who had been waiting years for the perfect moment to betray him. His name appeared in my mind like a whisper. David. The officers put Robert in the patrol car while he struggled, insulted, and shouted my name with a fury so animal that for a second I feared he might break the handcuffs. But then the door slammed shut, and his voice remained isolated behind the armored glass. The silence that followed was thick, electric, full of tension accumulated over years. Linda fell to her knees and began to cry like I had never seen her cry. It was not guilt, nor fear, nor shame. It was release. It was a knot of anguish untied after too much time carrying it alone. My son stood motionless, processing everything while I watched the car moving away, slowly until it became an invisible point at the end of the street. But I knew this did not end with Robert handcuffed. I knew that behind this detention was someone else pulling the strings. Someone who did not act out of kindness, but out of revenge. We entered the house. I locked the door. The air smelled of dust, of tension, and of truth. A truth that for the first time was completely exposed on the table inside a black notebook full of secrets. My son approached me. Dad, you said you knew who reported Robert. Who is David? Linda slowly lifted her face, pale as a sheet. David, she whispered. He was Robert's apprentice, his assistant, his right hand for a long time. I nodded. Yes, David was his shadow, his ally, his accomplice, but he was also his victim. Robert always had a special talent for manipulating people who admired him. My son frowned. But why would he help us now? I pointed to the notebook. Because he wrote half of this. David knew everything. He noted it for Robert. And when Robert began to destroy his life too, David understood something important. The only way to survive Robert is to sink him before he sinks you. Linda breathed tremulously. David came to see me a few months ago, she confessed. He told me he could no longer keep helping Robert, that he had discovered what he was really putting in Michael. He said he wanted to fix everything, but that he needed time. I did not know whether to believe him. And what did he ask you in exchange? I asked with my heart racing. Linda wiped her tears. That I help him gather evidence if the time came. My son clenched his fists. And why didn't you tell us, Mom? Why didn't you speak sooner? She looked at him with an expression that broke my soul. Because I was afraid of losing you both, and because Robert told me that if I said a word he would hurt David too, and I could no longer carry more destruction. I did not know what to answer. Linda had been an accomplice, yes. She had lied, yes. But she had also been a victim of a man who knew very well how to destroy a life slowly. I sat next to the table, opened the notebook again, and turned the pages to the beginning. There was everything date by date, dosage by dosage, instructions that seemed taken from a clinical manual. And then on page 3, I saw something that had gone unnoticed before. A clumsy drawing of a cup with a note next to it. Use always the same one to create habit. I pointed that out to my son. Look at this. Here it all started. Robert knew that if I got used to a single cup, it would be easier not to notice the changes in taste, texture, or color of the drink. And Linda executed every step thinking she was helping me. Linda sobbed again. Forgive me, Michael. I did not know I was hurting you. You did not do it, I responded softly. He did it. You were only a piece in his game. But something still did not add up. Something deeper. Something that had to do with the phrase Linda had repeated for years. It is better this way. Linda, I said, looking at her, I want you to tell me the truth. When exactly did this ritual of the cup begin? She looked down. A few months after your medical exam. Robert came one day and told me you were at risk, that you needed constant support, that the best thing was to do it without you knowing, because you would refuse treatment. And you believed him? Asked my son, incredulous. She closed her eyes. I saw your father tired, fatigued, sad some days. I did not know what to do. And Robert had a way of speaking so convincing, so sure. I thought it was the right thing. But it was not just that. I knew Linda would not do something so extreme just out of fear or desperation. Linda, I said with a grave voice, what else did Robert tell you? She looked up with tears sliding down her cheeks. He told me that your father, that you could lose your memory if we did not follow the treatment, that you could forget important things, that you could forget. Her voice broke. Me. My son put a hand on her head, as if the weight of that sentence had fallen on him too. My heart tightened. Linda did not act out of malice. She acted out of terror. Terror of losing me. Terror fed by an expert in manipulation. Linda, I whispered, I would never have forgotten you. You did not need any of this to keep me. She fell to her knees again. I only wanted to keep you with me, she cried, and I ended up hurting you. My son knelt beside her. Mom, this does not justify you, he said firmly, but it does explain why you fell. He used you. He broke you. He made you believe his plan was the only way out. She nodded nonstop, but I kept looking at the notebook. There was something else, a phrase written in different handwriting. It was not Robert's clumsy handwriting. It was a finer, more even script. David. The phrase said, if you find this, do not trust Robert. He does not want to cure him, he wants to control him. And if he achieves the final dose, Michael will not be the same again. My breathing cut off. Final dose? What did that mean? I showed the page to Linda. She remained in shock. I never saw that note, she said. David must have written it later. My son stood up abruptly. Dad, this was not just manipulation. This could be fatal. I looked toward the window. Robert was no longer there. But the battle was just beginning. Because now we knew. David knew more than he said. Robert had a final plan. Linda was never alone, although she was not safe either. I stood up with difficulty. We have to find David, I said. He is the key to everything. My son nodded. Linda remained motionless. For the first time in years, the routine of my cup had lost its power, and I had recovered mine. The house was plunged into a strange silence, a silence that was not calm but preparation, as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting for the next move. Linda was still on the floor, trembling hands resting on her legs, while my son paced the living room like a caged animal. I held the black notebook in my hands, feeling its weight, as if it were a bomb ready to explode. We have to find David, I repeated this time more firmly. My son stopped. But how? We do not know where he lives or where he could have gone. Linda lifted her head slowly. I might be able to help, she said with a weak voice. I approached her. Linda, this is important. What do you know? She swallowed nervously. Robert had a place where he met with David when he wanted no one to see them, a secluded place outside the city. I went once when Robert forced me to bring him a payment. My son frowned. What place? Linda closed her eyes as if remembering that sight was painful for her. An old cabin abandoned near the river, about 30 minutes from here. Robert said it was neutral, that no one would bother them there. I nodded slowly. That was the first solid clue we had. Get ready, I told my son. We are going. He opened his eyes wide. Now? Now, I replied firmly. Before Robert gets out of the station. Before David changes his mind. Before someone else moves the pieces for us. Linda got up, stumbling. Michael, be careful. That place is not safe. Nothing is any more, Linda, I replied. but we have to try. My son took the car keys. I put the notebook in the inside pocket of my jacket. Upon opening the door, Linda ran to me and grabbed my arm tightly. "Do not go without telling me something first," she said with tears in her eyes. I stared at her. "Tell me." She took a deep breath. Her voice trembled. "David is not like you think. He was not always against Robert. There was a time when he also believed in that plan." My heart skipped a beat. "What plan?" Linda looked away. "The plan to control you." My son clenched his teeth. "What?" David also agreed. Linda nodded with pain. "Robert made him believe you were an obstacle, that your life was at risk, and that without the treatment, you could hurt your family unintentionally. David was inexperienced, impressionable. He believed they were saving you." I felt a mixture of anger and disappointment run through me like lightning. "And when did he change?" Linda looked down. "When he saw the effects? When he realized Robert did not want to help you but control you? And when Robert began to demand things from David that not even he was willing to do?" My son took a deep breath. "Then David is afraid, just like you?" "Yes," whispered Linda, "and that is why he reported Robert. But he is also dangerous." I nodded slowly. "I know, and yet it is our only option." We left the house. The cold wind hit our clothes like an omen. My son drove while I watched the road with a mixture of nostalgia and rage. At my 68 years, I never imagined I would be involved in something like this. Conspiracies, manipulation, blackmail, and a brother who wanted to reduce me to a puppet. But life has strange ways of reminding you that you are still alive. After 20 minutes of driving, the city began to disappear behind us. The landscape became wilder with twisted trees that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. The river appeared on the right, dark and deep, winding through the brush. "Is it here?" asked my son. "Further ahead," I replied vaguely, recognizing the place from Linda's descriptions. After a few more minutes, I saw it. The cabin, old, of gray wood, with small windows and a door that seemed to have been forced more than once. The air around was heavy, as if nature itself warned that this place had witnessed dark acts. We parked at a safe distance. "Is there someone inside?" asked my son. I narrowed my eyes. There were no lights. There was no movement. But there was an old car parked next to it. A car I knew. David's car. "He is here," I said in a low voice. My son swallowed hard. "Do we go in?" I nodded. We approached slowly, stepping on dry leaves that crunched under our feet like ancient bones. Every step made my heart race more. We reached the door. It was ajar. My son looked at me. "Do I go first?" "No," I replied firmly. "I go first." I pushed the door gently. The interior was dark, but not completely. A kerosene lamp flickered on a table. Shadows danced on the walls like figures wanting to escape. And then I heard it. A sob, a human sob. "David!" I called. "It is Michael." The sob stopped. My son turned on his cell phone flashlight and pointed it toward a corner. David was there, sitting on the floor with his head in his hands, his face marked by fear, guilt, and deep exhaustion. "Michael," he murmured, "I knew you would come." I knelt in front of him. "Robert was detained," I said. "Thanks to you." David looked up. His eyes were red. "I did not do it for you," he whispered. "I did it because he was going to destroy me, but also because I knew he was about to give the last dose." My heart jumped. "Last dose?" David nodded. "Yes. Robert said that if your body got used to it enough, the last dose would have left you." He swallowed saliva. "Irreversible. Not dead, but different. Easy to handle. As he wanted." My son clenched his teeth. "And he already had that dose." David nodded slowly. "Yes. And it is—" He pointed to the pocket of his jacket. "Here." My breathing stopped. "David," I said slowly, "why did you keep it?" He looked at me with a mixture of shame and regret, because I did not know if Robert would force me to use it. The silence that followed was brutal. There was no turning back. Robert had wanted to destroy me. David had been part of it. Linda had been an instrument, and now everyone was begging for redemption. My son turned to me. "Dad, what do we do now?" I looked at David. I looked at the vial in his pocket. I looked at my hands, and I answered, "Now, we make justice." David was still sitting on the floor, trembling with his eyes fixed on the vial he carried in his pocket. A small, transparent bottle, harmless to the naked eye, but with the potential to change my life forever. My son watched him with a mixture of compassion and contained rage, while I tried to assimilate the magnitude of what that object represented. The final dose, the last step of Robert's plan, the master stroke that would have left everything in his favor. "Give it to me," I told David. He looked up surprised. "What are you going to do with this?" "What Robert never imagined I would do," I replied coldly. My son intervened. "Dad, wait. We do not know what it contains. We do not know how to handle it." I looked at him. "Son, for a whole year I ingested this without knowing it. Now at least I have the opportunity to decide what to do with it." David lowered his head. "You should not touch it, Michael. Robert was obsessed with that vial. He said it was the key, that with it no one could stop him." I reached out my hand. "Give it to me, David." With a trembling sigh, he took out the bottle and handed it to me. It was heavier than I expected. I held it between my fingers while a current of memories passed through me. The mornings with the cup, the inexplicable tiredness, the occasional dizziness, the arguments with Linda that I never understood, the sensation of losing parts of myself without knowing why. Everything was here inside a vial. "Did Robert tell you exactly what it contained?" I asked. David shook his head. "He only called it the final adjustment. He said it would leave you docile, submissive, that you could live without problems. But never question him, never disobey him, never confront him." My son hit the table with his fist. "That man is sick. He is a monster." "No," I corrected in a low voice. "He is a coward. And today, that ends." I put the vial in the inside pocket of my jacket. I had a plan, one that was forming in my mind since David mentioned the existence of that dose, a plan Robert would never have anticipated, a simple but devastating plan. "David," I said, looking at him, "I need to know one thing, just one, whatever it is. Did Robert act alone?" David swallowed hard before answering. "In the plan against you?" "Yes. He had contacts, people who got him substances, people who owed him favors, but the direct control over Linda and over you was exclusively his." That was enough. I stood up. "We are leaving." My son opened his eyes. "Where?" "To the police station." David stood up immediately. "You cannot go. If you provoke him, he will say everything is false, that Linda invented it, that you are manipulating the evidence. Robert is not stupid. He can spin the story so the guilty ones look like you." I looked at him firmly. "David Robert no longer has power over me, and the more he speaks, the more he will incriminate himself." My son frowned. "Dad, are you sure about this?" I nodded. "More than ever. Robert has always used my silence as a weapon well. Now I am going to give him just what he does not expect, my voice." We left the cabin, leaving David behind. Although he was trembling, I knew he also wanted this to end. He knew the only way to get rid of Robert forever was for me to confront him, while having for the first time in my life proof. We got into the car and drove toward the city. On the way, my son looked at me several times. "Dad, what is that plan you said you had?" I took a few seconds to answer. "Robert always believed he could control me, could handle my body, my emotions, my thoughts. Well, I am going to show him that never, not even under his supposed treatment, did he break me completely." "How?" I took the vial out of my pocket and looked at it closely. "I will use this to destroy him." My son opened his mouth, alarmed. "What?" "Dad, you cannot. That is dangerous, illegal, risky." "Calm down," I interrupted him. "I am not going to give it to anyone, neither to Robert, nor to Linda, nor to myself. But this is the most powerful evidence we have. If Robert denies everything, this vial sinks him. My son breathed deeply relieved. I thought that. No, son, I calmed him. I'm not like him, but I can use what he created to sink him. When we arrived at the police station, Robert's car was still there. They had detained him. Good sign. It meant the anonymous complaint David had made was solid. We entered the building. An officer stopped us. How can I help you? We come to testify, I replied, about Robert Castillo. The officer arched an eyebrow. Are you Michael Castillo? Yes. His eyes lit up. Come in. The inspector wanted to speak with you. He led us to a small room with 2 chairs and a metal table. The inspector arrived minutes later. Mr. Castillo, he said, shaking my hand, your brother is here saying you suffer episodes of mental confusion, that your wife, too, that everything is a misunderstanding. I smiled calmly. Is that so? He insists no one should believe you. I took out the black notebook and put it on the table. Then I took out the vial and left it next to it. The truth is this, I said. The inspector opened his eyes with surprise while glancing through the notebook. This is serious. And it is real, I added. My son intervened. There are messages, dates, threats. He manipulated my mother and poisoned my father for over a year. The inspector nodded while taking notes. But then he looked at me intently. And you, Mr. Castillo? What do you want to happen with your brother? My answer was simple. I want the truth to destroy him, not my hands. At that moment, a scream echoed from the hallway. It was Robert. Michael! Michael! You do not know what you are doing. You are nothing without me. I stood up slowly and looked out the window of the interrogation room. Robert was there, handcuffed, his face decomposed by rage and fear. I looked him in the eyes for the first time without fear. You are wrong, Robert, I said with absolute serenity. Without you, I returned to being me. The agents dragged him away while he continued shouting incoherences. My son put a hand on my shoulder. For the first time in years, I felt free, and yet a chapter was still missing, one that would close forever the story of the cup of Linda and of me. The dawn received us outside the police station like a frozen sigh. The air smelled of cold earth, of exhaustion, of a sunrise that still did not dare to show itself. My son and I walked in silence toward the car. Neither of us knew how to process what had happened in the last hours. Robert was detained. David had confessed. Linda had revealed her participation. Forced, yes, but participation nonetheless. And I had in my pocket the vial that symbolized a whole year of lies, manipulations, and decisions made by others in my name. I opened the car door with trembling hands. I did not know if it was out of relief fear or simply because at my 68 years I no longer had the strength I thought I had. But my son looked at me with a respect I had never seen in his eyes. It was as if suddenly I had recovered something I had lost without realizing it. My dignity. We sat down. He started the engine but did not drive off. He stayed looking at the dark road in front of us. Dad, he said with a low voice, do you realize you could have died? I did not answer immediately. I stayed looking at my hands. Old hands marked by years of work, by tools, by caresses, by losses. Hands that had never trembled as much as now. Son, I replied finally, I was already dying, little by little without knowing it, not in the body, but in the mind, in the spirit. Robert was destroying me from the inside, and I did not see it. He gripped the steering wheel. And Mom? Mom was part of that, I sighed. Your mother was trapped. I do not justify her, but I can understand her fear. When you love someone, the terror of losing them can make you blind. He looked at me with eyes full of sadness. And are you going to forgive her? That question went through me like a spear. Forgiveness. A word as heavy as guilt, as sharp as the truth. I did not have a clear answer. Linda had hurt me, yes, but she had also been manipulated by a man who always knew where to strike. I do not know, I replied with sincerity. Forgiveness is not something given in a day, not even in a week. I need time and space. The only thing I know is that I no longer want to continue living in a lie. My son nodded. Then let's go home. The way back was silent. The light of the street lamps was reflecting on the windshield, and I thought about how strange life works. One can walk for years believing one treads on firm ground, and in a matter of hours discover one always stood on the edge of an abyss. When we arrived, Linda was sitting on the sofa with a blanket over her legs. Her eyes were red, but there were no tears, only a deep exhaustion of those that do not go away with sleep. She stood up as soon as she saw us enter. "Michael?" she said with a broken voice. I raised a hand to stop her. "Do not speak yet," I asked. "I need to say something first." She swallowed hard, nodding in silence. "Linda," I began, "you and I have shared 40 years of life. They were not perfect, but they were ours. You took care of me, of our son, of our home. You tried harder than anyone to keep this family standing, and yet you let Robert enter our life. You opened the door to a man you should never have allowed to get close. He manipulated you, yes, but you also allowed our trust to break." She closed her eyes. "I know, Michael. I was wrong. I failed you. I put you at risk. I cannot change that. But I swear I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," I replied softly. "But the damage is done, and I have to heal." Linda covered her face with her hands. "Are you going to leave me?" My son looked at us with anguish. I did not answer immediately. I walked to the kitchen. The dim light illuminated the table where so many times we had breakfast together. There was the white cup, harmless, silent, keeping secrets, like a tomb. I took it in my hands. "This cup," I said from the kitchen, "became a cage, a daily prison, a routine that erased me a little every morning." Linda approached slowly. "Michael, please." "No," I interrupted her. "I do not want to keep living in a prison disguised as love. I do not want to drink anything I do not choose. I do not want to depend on a lie to exist." I turned my back and opened the trash can. I dropped the cup. The sound of ceramic hitting plastic was more liberating than any word. Linda cried in silence. My son approached her and held her. I leaned on the table. I felt my chest full but not of pain. It was something different. It was the sensation of recovering control, of returning to being Michael, and not an experiment, not a patient who did not know he was one, not a man manipulated from the kitchen of his own house. I returned to the living room. Linda looked up with a broken heart. "What is going to happen with us, Michael?" I sat in front of her. "We are going to take distance," I replied calmly. "I need to recover my life. I need time to heal. I need to return to trusting myself before being able to trust you." She nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer for hours. "I understand," she whispered. "I will do what you need. Just do not hate me." "I do not hate you, Linda," I said sincerely, "but I also cannot continue living as if nothing happened." She brought a hand to her chest, crying, "I love you, Michael." "And I loved you too," I replied, "but true love cannot be forced. It must be breathed." My son intervened with a soft voice. "Dad, do you want me to stay with you tonight?" I looked at him. That young man who had grown under my roof, who had seen my weaknesses without judging me, who had been my strength when I thought I had lost my own. "Yes, son," I replied. "Stay." Linda got up slowly. "I'm going to the room to pack some things. I do not want to be in the way." I watched her walk toward the hallway, hunched, defeated, but also human. She was not a villain. She was not a monster. She was a woman who had loved badly, who had believed that controlling was protecting, who had fallen into the hands of a man worse than her. Meanwhile, I looked at the broken cup inside the trash can, and I realized something. The cup was empty. For the first time in a long time, I was too. Empty but clean. The void is not always loss. Sometimes it is space to start over. My son put a hand on my shoulder. "What you did today, Dad, not just anyone does." I smiled with fatigue. "What I did today was survive." "No," he corrected. Today you were reborn. I walked to the window. The street was dark, but now it felt different, less dangerous, more mine. A car passed slowly, and for a second I thought it was Robert returning to torment me. But no, he was behind bars, and although it would take a long time for justice to do its thing, at least for now, he could no longer touch me. I looked at my reflection in the glass-deep lines on the face-tired eyes, but behind there was something else. Firmness, determination, life. I took a breath and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow will be a new day, I said aloud. My son smiled. Yes, Dad, and we will face it together. I stayed there a moment longer, observing the silent street, feeling the gravity of a chapter that finally closed after too many days of darkness. It closed a story with a cup, with a substance, with a treacherous brother, with a scared wife, with a strong son, and with myself, a man who took too long to see himself clearly. But I saw myself, and that was enough. I turned off the living room. Light went up the stairs with slow steps, closed my room, and for the first time in a long, long time, I slept in peace. My name is Michael. I am 68 years old, and while I speak to you now, sitting in my favorite armchair, I feel something I thought I would never feel. Again, tranquility. Some days have passed since that night, when I confronted Robert, when Linda confessed her part, and when my own son reminded me who I really was. I'm not going to lie to you, it still hurts. I still wonder how I did not see what was happening in front of my eyes, how I allowed routine to disguise the poison, how I let someone else's fear become my prison. But today, sitting here, I understand something I did not see before. Sometimes life forces you to break, so you can rebuild yourself with your own hands, without anyone deciding for you which pieces to keep. The cup no longer exists. I threw it away myself, but I do not remember it with hate. I remember it as a reminder, a warning, a symbol that I will never again allow anyone to have power over my will. Linda went a few days with her sister. She needs help, me too. But we are alive, and that is already a victory. My son accompanies me, and every morning I prepare my own breakfast, without fear, without doubts, only with the certainty that I am still here, standing, breathing, recovering. Now that you heard my story, I want to ask you something. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, William's Revenge Stories, like the video, and tell me in the comments what you thought, what you would have done, and from what city you're watching us. I am Michael, and this was my story.